So again, thank you for coming for our weekly Sunday Krishna Fest. Today we're going to be speaking a little bit from the BhagavadGita as it is, and also Srila Prabhupada's Chaitanya Charitamrita. So you can all join me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 23rd day of February, 2020 in SanDiego, speaking at the weekly Krishna Fest. And tonight we'll be studying first from the BhagavadGita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And this is chapter 13, verse 23. Some of you may know this verse. You can chant response. Ubhadrashtana mantacha. I guess not. I'll just chant it myself. Bhattam bhokta maheshwara padamatmeti chapyukto dehismin purushakpara. Krishna says to Arjuna, in this body there is another, a transcendental enjoyer, who is the Lord, the supreme proprietor, who exists as the overseer and permitter. And the previous verse, he describes, Purushat pakatisto hi bhunkte pakati jan gunan karanam gunasangosya sadasadyoni janmasu. The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil among various species. Srila Prabhupada says in his purport, this verse is very important for an understanding of how the living entities transmigrate from one body to another. Living entities, that's us, the souls. It is explained in the second chapter that the living entity is transmigrating from one body to another just as one changes one's dress, one's clothes. This change of dress is due to his attachment to material existence. As long as one is captivated by this false manifestation, one has to continue transmigrating from one body to another. Due to one's desire to lord it over material nature, one is put into such undesirable circumstances. Under the influence of material desire, the living entity is born sometimes as a demigod, sometimes as a human being, sometimes as a beast, as a bird, as a worm, as an aquatic, as a saintly man, as a bug. This is going on. And in all cases, the living entity thinks himself to be the master of his circumstances, yet he is under the influence of material nature. How one is put into such different bodies is explained here. It is due to association with the modes of nature. We're going to explain those in a few minutes. One has to rise, therefore, above the three material modes and become situated in the transcendental position. That is called Krishna consciousness. Unless one is situated in Krishna consciousness, one's material consciousness will oblige him to transfer from one body to another because one has material desires since time immemorial. But one has to change that conception. That change can be effected only by hearing from authoritative sources. The best example is here. Arjuna is hearing the science of God from Krishna himself. The living entity, if he submits to this hearing process, will lose his long-cherished desire to dominate material nature, and gradually and proportionately, as he reduces his long desire to dominate, he comes to enjoy spiritual happiness. In a Vedic mantra it is said that as one becomes learned in association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one proportionally relishes his eternal blissful life. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So, I like to return to this verse periodically, especially with a diverse audience, which may not be familiar with so much the Krishna conscious philosophy, because this verse describes how we live in this material world. We may not understand all the terms, like what are these three modes of material nature? And What is this transmigration? How does that work? Now, many of you are familiar with these concepts, but I'm just going to review because this is foundational for our understanding of our position in this world and how we can achieve the actual success of life. This is one of the main points of the Vedic culture of India, is that there's a meaning to human life. There's a mission. It's not simply that we find ourselves in this body and we try to achieve as much happiness as possible in whatever our circumstances are, and then we pass away and that's the end. That's not what's going on. This is the first lesson of the BhagavadGita, is that our identity is actually separate from whatever body we happen to be occupying at the moment. Even in this one lifetime, we find ourselves moving through various bodies, isn't it? The child body, right? And our consciousness is different, our mind is different. We don't know anything about anything. We're dependent on our parents, our brother, older brother, if he's nice to you, you know. And so many different relationships. That's our life as children, you can recall. It was a much different conception, right? First of all, everybody's so tall, you know. Do you ever remember that? You're looking at everybody's knees, basically. It's a whole different idea of what your position in life. You're very much dependent. You're very much. And as time goes on, that changes. You go to school, you get a different, suddenly there's a whole different field of relationships open up, and you start learning a lot of things. You can read. Reading is a major opening up of knowledge and so many different. And as you go on, you're in a different environment. And you go to high school. We have high school in America, middle school, whatever. And gradually, you're changing. Your mind is changing. Your body's certainly changing. But you're the same person, right? I remember when I got my Social Security card, I was like 13 or 14 years old or something. And my father told me, memorize that number. You'll have it all your life. It's such an important thing, you know. I've still got that card. Not worth much after 40 years in the harekrishna movement, not paying any taxes. But anyway, so that suddenly that's a whole new important relationship I have with the government, you know. Anyway, it goes on and on like that, and gradually, you get older, you have so many relationships making and breaking, and your consciousness is constantly changing. But you're the same person. You have the same Social Security card. There's the same number on there, right? Your birth certificate. There it is, right? The little footprint, it's about as big as a thumbprint. I've got that also. But it's you're constantly changing, but you're the same person. So what is it that's you? Who is you? Are you the little baby? Are you the adolescent? Are you middle age, old age? Where's the real you in there? The soul, the consciousness that's occupying the body. That's the real you. This is an essential, basic concept to understand what's going on and how we can achieve our goal in life. Because we can't perceive this on our own. We need to have someone explain it. It's like I never thought of that until I heard Prabhupada explain it, until Krishna explains it in the Bhagavad Gita. Dehinosmin yata dehe komaram yovanang jada. Just as the soul passes through childhood and boyhood and old age, you see? Similarly, the soul will attain another body after death. You know, the sober person is not bewildered by such a change, but it's very hard to find those sober people. Everyone is thinking it's all over. I mean, most of the people think it's all over at death, and certainly very few are thinking I had a life before birth. Even fewer, right? But both of those are essential to kind of break us out of this bondage of identifying with our specific body we happen to be in now. Because then we realize it's a tremendously liberating concept in one sense. There's no death. Najayate mriyate vakadachan. There's no birth, there's no death for the soul. It's all simply a vast illusion. It's a great illusion. And when we base our lives on that illusion, then we ensure our suffering. Because whatever relationships we have with people, with things, with money, with name, fame that we have in this lifetime, it's all going to be finished. As soon as we leave the body, then what's the meaning of all that? You may have $1 million or $1 billion, but it's attached to your name, to that number on the bank card. That name was the name of your body. Your body's gone. It's sitting in the grave. Where are you going? That's the science of transmigration that Krishna teaches in the Bhagavad Gita. According to our consciousness that we develop, the science is like this, is that we have actually two bodies. We have what we call the gross body, which we actually call the body, the one you see in the mirror, you see? And we have the subtle body, which is where we actually live. The mind, the intelligence, and the sense of self or ego. Manas, buddhi, and ahankar. When the gross body dies, the subtle body doesn't. It's that subtle body, that mind, with all the thoughts and desires that you built up and your karma, with your activities, everything's taken into account, that will determine your next body. Now, that changes everything. Because now, if I'm really thinking of my best future, and we are, right? We want to have the best situation in the future and now. Then that means I should try to develop the right consciousness to get the best body, isn't it? It's kind of reflective of what we do in ordinary life. What's the big push for education? Because the parents know, the little kid who plays, he's 5 years old, he's playing, he doesn't want to stop playing. Does any kid spontaneously want to go to first grade or grade school? No, you have to kind of be dragged along, isn't it? I know I was. So, but the parents know, if you don't develop your mind and your awareness and get an education, what's an education but a training of the mind, then your future will be dark. You won't get a good job, you may end up on the street, who knows, The parents know. And so then you get an education. Gradually, you get trained. So the mind is the key. And that's also a key for transmigration, for the next body. So what are the possibilities? Infinite, actually. And that's what the first verse was at. Purushak prakatisto hi. The Purusha, that's us. A Purusha means a living entity who is trying to enjoy, who's taking the role of the enjoyer. And that's us in the conditioned state in the material world. We're actually constitutionally Prakriti. Prakriti means energy. We're one of Krishna's energies. There's nothing in existence that's separate from God. Everything is either God directly, or his expansions, or his energy. Just like this temple we're sitting in. What is it made of? It's made of cement. It's made of various kinds of paint and wires and tubes and pipes and things like that. It's one of many, many buildings in this area. That's what Prabhupada said is earth, water, and fire. You take clay or some kind of, you add fire, you make it strong, even the metal, It's all earth, water, and fire. So this whole environment is made up of those things. Well, where did that come from? Krishna says, Bhumar apo analovayo gangmano buddhadeva cha. He says right in the 7th chapter. Earth means solid matter. Earth, water, fire, air, space, mind, intelligence, ego. These 8 energies, they're inanimate. They're not living. They're not conscious. These 8 energies are my lower energy. They're separated from me. But there's a higher energy, which is us, para prakriti. Apare mitastan prakritim vidime param, jiva bhutam. That's us, jiva, the living entities. And we're sustaining this body, and altogether, we're sustaining the universe. The only reason it's here is because we're in it. Otherwise it'd just be undifferentiated matter. So we each have our own little private universe called the body for a certain number of years. But because we're not God, we're just living entities, eventually it breaks down. It can't be sustained. And all of that, earth, water, fire, and ether made our body is left behind, and we go to another one. It's arranged beforehand, according to the consciousness we have cultivated in our lifetime. That's what's going on. And we've been through thousands of these incarnations, material bodies. Some of them human, most of them not. Why not? Even the animals, the dogs, the cats, the insects, the birds, the fish, even the trees and the plants, they're all living entities, but the consciousness is more or less covered. In the animal and the lower species, they get more and more covered like that. But it's the same living entity. Doesn't stay for eternity in that particular body. Again, transmite. And in the lower species, you automatically come up until you hit the human form. The human form is a special gift by Krishna. It's the juncture by which you can escape this prison house of birth and death. I was thinking of an analogy. Many of you know, if you grew up, you saw some movies or something, someone's on death row, Well, I learned this, not from being on death row, obviously, but from knowledge, that they allow your final meal, right? You can have what you want, within limits, obviously. But rather than the ordinary prison fare, you can have your favorite food, And then they take you off to execute. Thanks a lot, But I mean, but that's true. So what's the idea there? Who is trying to explain it to me? I thought it was, well, okay, the person's going to be executed. They're nervous. They're in anxiety and everything. At least give them a little something, a little pleasure, before executing. So the whole material world is like that. We're all, I don't want to, it's not depressing. It's just reality. We're all on death row. We're all doomed. Every one of us is going to eventually leave this body. Now, it may be in this circumstance, that circumstance, but all of the pleasures that you can get with this body is just a diversion. It's Maya's trick to make you forget your actual mission in life, which is to break out of prison entirely. To be released. Krishna says in the 7th chapter, Daivi yesha gunamayi mama maya dorutyaya mameviye papadyante mayametang tarantide. This divine energy of mine, known as Durga, right? You know what Durga means? Prison house, fort. Can't go. That's what Durga means. Material energy is impossible to get over on your own, just by your own effort. There's no way to do it. But if you surrender to Krishna, you can easily cross beyond it. Why is that? Because she's the servant of Krishna. It's just like the governor comes to the prison, or he orders, oh, this person will be pardoned, And then they open the doors and out you go. So Krishna is the supreme governor. He's the supreme Ishvara of everything. And if he sees that, oh, this person is now reformed, they're surrendering to me, they want to serve me again, fine, come back to me. Come back home, back to Godhead. Prabhupada introduced this phrase to us back when he first started teaching in the West in 1965, 66. And it's so meaningful, just that one phrase. Back home, back to Godhead. That's our real home. That means that's where we came from. We know that, but we've forgotten. We're all exiles here. How can you be happy? We're souls, we're spirit souls. Our nature is Sat Chit Ananda. We're eternal, full of knowledge and full of bliss. Now, who can say in this room that in our present incarnation we're eternal, full of knowledge, full of bliss? Just the opposite. It's Sat Chit Ananda. We're Asat, Achit, Nirananda. Just the opposite. Right? We're certainly Asat. Right? We're not going to live forever. And so many things we don't know. There's so much ignorance, this basic philosophy we don't know. And then there's the Ananda part, which is really what we live for. Oh, I found this, great. So Ananda is different from what Indriya Priti. Indriya Priti is Sanskrit for sense gratification. So what do we live in this world for? What makes it, the old saying, I don't know if it's current, what makes the world go round? Love, relationship with people, many with pets. I read this, people have more pets than children now in America. There's more households in America where there's a pet as the prime object of love than children. It's a sad commentary, but it's true. But, so that's, without that relationship, what's the meaning of it? And not just with, animate things, but also all the things you have. Those cars and, everything, that's what, it's all relationship. So, but we find in material life, these relationships are frustrating mostly because they're temporary. Even if you find a perfect mate and you're very compatible and everything is blissful, you don't think of it, right, when you're 23, 24, whatever it may be, but it's temporary. It's going to end. That's one of the great things about getting old. you can see how fast everything goes. And I'm telling you, it seems to go faster and faster and faster. Because you actually, your sense of the passage of time has to do with the percentage of your lifetime. I mean, going back again, if you can recall what it's like to be 6 years old, 7 was a major, threshold that you're trying to reach, right? Because that 1 year is a big percentage of your 7 years. But what's 1 year if you're 70? 1/70th. I mean, this whole year is just, this month, it's like yesterday we started February, and now it's already, the end of February's coming. It just seems to go faster and faster. So that time means that it's expiring. All of the whatever relationships you have, the money, the persons, the things and that. Now some of it you're glad that it expires, because that was an unpleasant relationship. But the point is, it's all temporary. It's just going, and it's just like a dream. What's the actual significance of it? I mean, I like to, sometimes think back to my, days as a young man, 20, 22. The most important thing in my life, that I was ready to sacrifice so much time for, was combating the war in Vietnam. Now it's just a little historical note in a high school history book. But in those days, it was all-consuming. So many of us as that age, we were threatened to be drafted, and we knew people who went over there, and it would just seem completely wrong. What are we doing to these poor people? I mean, that's what And so day after day, I would follow the news, I would go on demonstrations, that was my life and soul. So then time passed. Eventually, the war came to an end, and it just passed into it's not important anymore. It wasn't important even way back then when I started another era of my life. So that's what this is all about. It's things you're placing so much importance on. Your present relationships, it's life and soul, it's everything. And then time passes and it just evaporates. Especially evaporates when you leave the body and you go into another thing. So where is that relationship that will not fail? Where is that relationship that can be completely fulfilling, and dare I say it, for eternity? Because that's what we're talking about. We ourselves are eternal. The jayate mriyate vakatachan nayam budvava vitava nabuya arjo nitya shashtrato yam purano nahanyate hanyamane shirire. Prabhupada would quote this verse so many times. It more or less encapsulates the whole teachings of the 20-verse lesson on the soul in the second chapter, which is the basic, foundation of the rest of the Gita. And as for the soul, there is never birth nor death at any time. It's not that souls are coming into being now, and then, or they came in before, and then in the future more will come in. No, we are as eternal as Krishna. He's Aja, we're Aja. It's just Aja, Nitya, Shashvata, Purana, ancient. We were all around millions of years ago. We didn't just come into being. We had different experience, spoke a different language, different gender, everything. It's just one costume after another. And it's like you go to a Halloween ball. We used to do this as kids, dress up. And I remember one time, things stick in your mind. One of my friends, he dressed up so perfectly, and he wasn't talking to give away who he really was, that we couldn't tell who he was. He had the mask on, and everything. And it was like, who is that? Who is that? So we should also ask, who are we? Who are we? We're wearing these costumes, and each of us is really acting perfectly according to the costume, right? The gender, the language, everything. But it's just temporary. It's just going to go like that compared to the eternal time. So what is our actual form, our nature, our activities? That is what the goal of Bhakti Yoga is, Krishna consciousness. To revive our memory, our understanding of who we actually are, and how we can revive that platform of eternal, unending bliss and happiness in relationship to God, to Krishna. And so I just want to read one more verse here, because how are we going to get that knowledge? The key is we're all in ignorance, So somehow the light has to penetrate the darkness. And that's what this verse is about. Krishna is teaching Sanatan Goswami, his prime disciple. I won't go into, he was... born in a Brahmin family, highly trained, Sanskrit and all these things, but he got drawn into serving in the Muslim government. And then when he met Lord Chaitanya, he and his brother quit. They were instructed to go to Vrindavan. It's a whole adventure in itself, how they got free. And then they became, wrote so many wonderful books and founded temples and really were foundational in us sitting here today. So Lord Chaitanya is teaching him for 2 months in Benares, in the early 16th century in Benares. And he tells him this, how are we going to know this, get this knowledge? The forgetful conditioned soul, that's us, is educated by Krishna through the Vedic literatures and the realized spiritual master and the super soul, those three. Through these, that forgetful soul can understand the Supreme Lord as he is, and he can understand that Krishna is his eternal master and deliverer from the clutches of Maya, illusion. In this way, one can acquire real knowledge of his conditioned life and can come to understand how to attain liberation. So this is the key. Srila Prabhupada, he came to America only after a great effort, trying to publish 3 hardback books with no money, no editors, practically no place to live permanently. That's what he did in India. He would come from Vrindavan to Delhi and back, the print and all these things. Finally got these 3 books printed. It was the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Those of you who are familiar with the book, it's 12 cantos, and he was planning to print this in 60 volumes. He's already 68 years old, and he has practically no money, no friends, and so he decided to retire to Vrindavan and just write. No, he decided to get on a boat, a steamer, a cargo ship, not a cruise ship, and go to America all alone with no friends and no money, and just rely on Krishna. And this is how this movement began. Krishna empowered him. So he wanted to give us this knowledge through the books, beginning with Bhagavatam and BhagavadGita, which he also struggled very hard to print in the early 70s. Got, there's a history to it. I know it very well. So let me just read a little of this purport. Being forgetful of his real position, that's us. The conditioned soul may take help from Shastra, that's the Vedic literatures, Guru, spiritual master, and the super soul within his heart. Those 3, the books, the realized soul, and the super soul. Krishna is situated within everyone's heart as the super soul, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 1861. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. So that's it. This is a big machine, and sometimes it screws up, just like a car. Right? I just got my car fixed. I had a timing belt or something had to be replaced. So similarly, the body is just a big machine. It's an amazing machine, self-healing, and all these things. But eventually, it breaks down because it's a complicated machine. So and we get a new machine. So there's the Lord in the heart. He's helping us. And as Vyasadeva, who's also a Shaktivesh, he is empowered incarnation of Krishna. He's written all these literatures, the Mahabharata, which contains the Bhagavad Gita. He wrote the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the commentary on the Vedanta Sutta, which he also wrote. Now, all of these were in India, in the Sanskrit language. Some of you may know Sanskrit from childhood, but I didn't. It wouldn't help me at all. So the translator, Srila Prabhupada, translated them into English that we could understand. He created like a whole new lexicon, that how do you translate some of these? Some of them are not translatable, just like rasa. Rasa is the pleasurable, the pleasure that comes from the transcendental relationship with Krishna. It's related to the rasa dance, but that's a different word. But the idea is that where's the word in English that really conveys that? So Prabhupada said, well, my spiritual master called it the mellow, so that came into the English language. A noun, mellow as a noun, You just have to experience it. But so there's a whole language thing, how to translate these things, and Krishna consciousness and all these things. So those 3, Vedavyas, who wrote them all down, and the realized person who realized all these literatures, lives it, and can convey it, taking the trouble, and the super soul within the heart. Krishna is also in the heart. He's directing our wanderings in the material energy, but he's perfectly willing to give us good instruction so we can get out of the material energy. He's instructing us, Like Like our conscience. Prabhupada sometimes conscience. Conscience is the super soul, telling you, no, that's wrong, don't do it. Now, if you continually ignore that, then after a while you don't hear that anymore. And you become a sociopath. No more morals, That can happen. We can become very covered over and become, cruel and distorted. Asuras, We don't want that. So we need to take advantage of these gifts that Krishna is giving. The Shastra, or the scripture, books, as they are, which Srila Prabhupada gave us in abundance. The teachers who are following the principles and are willing to instruct and to give you. This is a real Vaishnava. Prabhupada was burning to give this knowledge. Come all the way to America and then stay in New York for so long before he got any traction. He could have gone back anytime. And that would be the end of the movement, no movement. But he stayed, and he found some, fertile ground in the hearts to plant the seeds, and the rest is history. So that person is essential, and also take advantage of the super soul in the heart. If we chant the holy name, this is another very important process. Krishna is reaching out to us through the books like BhagavadGita, great spiritual masters like Srila Prabhupada, and his holy name is the chief way that he's made himself accessible. Through his incarnation as Lord Chaitanya, who really propagated the holy name as the way in this age. So we have the holy name, we have the beautiful deities, this movement, we have the books, we have the prasadam, the association. We should take advantage of it. Time is moving on. We don't know what's going to be going on in this world. We've got the locusts moving, we've got the coronavirus, we've got our dear leader, and we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Chant Hare Krishna. Take advantage. The example is given Maharaj Parikshit himself, right? He was going along doing very nicely, leading the world and the fine king. And through some Krishna's arrangement, he was cursed to die in 7 days. So what did he do? Get depressed? No. He renounced everything. He said, okay, this is Krishna speaking. Now I'm just going to sit and listen to Krishna Katha. I'm going to fill my heart and fill my mind, fill my ears with the transcendental sound from the purest source, Shukadeva Goswami, who was the son of Vyasadeva and who had realized everything. That in itself is a very inspiring history. So we don't know if we have 7 days. We all think, well, I've got, I'm just a young man, young woman, I got plenty of time. Or I'm only 55, I can take it easy. It's a gradual process. We don't know. We don't know. There's an urgency. That's again and again in the Shastra telling you. Don't wait. Turnam yateta nabateta namrityavat. And we've attained this human form of life after many, many births. And it's a unique, because artadam, you know what arta means? Arta means something valuable, the most valuable thing. Arta often means money, which is valuable in one sense. But what's really valuable is called swa-arta or svarta, the goal of the soul. And that is, once again, break out of the round of birth and death, reestablish our eternal loving relationship with Krishna, and go back home, back to Godhead. That's it. That's the mission of our life. So understanding that, or at least having some faith that it might be true, we should investigate through a careful study of Srila Prabhupada's books. Or we have our classes every morning without fail, Bhagavatam class, except Mondays we have Ishopanishad. And in the evening, 3 nights a week, we have a Bhagavad Gita class. If you can't make it personally, tune in on, where should they tune in? Where's our Janardhan? Mayapur TV? Anyway. Tapas. What do we look for? SanDiego Live. ISKCON SanDiego Live. Yes, 1 hour every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We have Bhagavad Gita class. Thursday night, the lounge. Saturday night, we have a nice program here. And, of course, Sunday. And Friday night, there's something going on. The point is that we have to make time for this because this is the most important thing. And Krishna will help us from within the heart. If we chant, we have so many beads, we could show you how to chant on the beads. We have 2 forms, the kirtan and the japa. The personal chanting is very important because don't forget, it's the mind. We have to retrain that mind to always remember Krishna. If we're always remembering Krishna, we're safe. Even if we have an accident, something happens, heart attack, who knows? Asteroid, they're coming. You don't know. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. We'll leave the body and go back to Godhead. That's the only safe place in the material world. Prabhupada says the safest place in the material world is Harinam Sankirtan. Right, Guru Krishna? You remember that quote? Yeah. That's the safest place, to be chanting and be absorbed in chanting the holy name. So we have so many opportunities, and the process works. I mean, those of us who have been around for a few years, it's not just because we're bored and we have nothing else to do. It's because there's substance there. Even if we're not pure devotees, we haven't completed the process. The encouraging thing about it is there's no loss or diminution. Can anyone say that? Can Bill Gates say that? He's got so many billions of dollars. I read that he's just buying or has bought a £500 million, 500 million pound yacht, special yacht. Isn't that a waste? Can you imagine what we could do at £500,000? That's what, $600 million? So many temples, so many things. We could actually afford to have a temple president. This would be great. Anyway, we have a certain amount of we need to make our investment. We all have some capital we can invest: time, energy, attention, faith. And if we invest a little bit in this, we'll find dividends, to our eternal benefit. And so I just encourage you, please take it seriously, and take advantage of this wonderful gift of the books of Srila Prabhupada. You take it, get something from the store, one book that you haven't seen before. There's a book that I put together many years ago based on Prabhupada's lectures on the second chapter of the Bhagavatam, first canto, where the question is, what is real Dharma? The question was given by the sages at Naimisharanya. What is real Dharma that can completely satisfy the self? I mean, any civilized society must have some kind of religion, And so, as it said, without Dharma, human life is nothing but animal life. In the Hitopadesh, we share eating, sleeping, and mating and defending. Is that from us? No. Yeah, no drinking anything else. Yeah, sorry. So eating, sleeping, mating, and defending with the animals. So what's the difference? You know the line? Dharma hoitesha madhiko vishesho, dharma nihina pashapi samana. The distinguishing factor is not, how ornate you're performing your sleeping and your eating and your mating and your defending. That's not it. That's just polished animal life. But it's Dharma. And then the question is, well, what is that Dharma? What is the quality of that Dharma? What really makes it genuine? And that's answered right near the beginning of the Bhagavatam. Savai pangsang paro dharmo yato bhakti radhokshaje ahaitu kyati patayata yatma supersediti. This is the Dharma that can bring supersedity, complete satisfaction to the soul. That which awakens bhakti to adhokshaja. Adhokshaja is a name for God that means transcendental to the mind and senses. That's the name for Krishna. But what are the qualifications of that bhakti? It must be ahaituki and apratayata. Ahaituki means no material motivation. And aprataya means without stopping. So who's doing that? Without material motivation. This is the key element in bhakti, is that we're just doing it for Krishna's pleasure. We're not doing it so that we'll get some material benefit, or even that we'll get mukti, get liberation. The ultimate in bhakti is simply, what does Krishna want me to do? Let me please him. This was Arjuna's realization at the end, right? The last thing he wanted to do when he got on that battlefield was kill Bhishma Dev and Dronacharya and all his friends and relatives. Even Dhritarashtra's sons, he said, I can't live without them, which is the most amazing statement in the first chapter. They who tried to kill him and his brother and burn him alive. You remember that? But he said, oh, he's such a kind Vaishnava. He forgives them completely. I can't live without them. So that's the last thing he wanted to do. But it's exactly what Krishna wanted him to do. And finally, he surrendered to that. You see, Nashtamoho smita labda, that by your mercy, O Krishna, my illusion is now gone, and I will do as you say. Kadishe vachanang tava. Those 3 words, practically, if we can just adopt those, that's our success. It means, oh Krishna, I'll do as you say. So that's out of love. Now Krishna, we find out with the details, when you hear about him and you see him and he's the most lovable. He's the most lovable person. He has all this beauty, wonderful personality, He himself loves, all the cows. He knows all their names. He can play them on the flute. I mean, it's amazing when you study his Vrindavan Leela. That's why the Bhagavatam is so important, because it gives the details of Krishna's pastimes, personality in the 10th canto, so that you can actually feel the awakening of love there. He's most lovable. So what's preventing us? Because our love has been all, invested in the material energy. So the key is using the very material energy, our very material senses, to connect to Krishna and express that love. Even if the love isn't there, do it anyway. Make the offering, chant the holy name, and gradually that will develop. That's Bhakti Yoga. Yes, it's not, easy. There are certain austerities, but that's what it takes. Like there's I wrote this one poem. Some of you have seen this painting. You can visualize. Krishna's sitting in the forest. Oh, very beautiful. Everything lotus eyes, lotus face. And he's got a little dove on his hand, and there's a deer over here, and there's a little cow over there. And it's a very idyllic scene. And so here's the poem. The sweetness of Sri Krishna's form beguiles. Still sweeter is his face, like autumn moon. But sweeter than the sweetest is his smile, whose luscious beauty makes the gopis swoon. Govinda's beauty captivates the doves, the swans, the deer, the cows, and every tree. Indeed, in Braja, every creature loves Sri Krishna and is drowned in ecstasy. That all-enchanting land is paradise, our home, where we may dwell eternally. Most welcome there are those who pay the price to learn to love Sri Krishna perfectly. So that's that's all in a nutshell. And yes, it's a training, but we have all the tools, we have the facility, and with a little faith and determination, we can feel the reality of Krishna there and the reality of Krishna consciousness, and move nicely on the path. So, any questions or comments on some of these points? Yes, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Not really. I think what we would say is that it reminds me of Prahlad Maharaj. Now, if you study the life of Prahlad, externally, he went through a lot of suffering. He went through a lot of suffering from his father, certainly, and yet he's the ideal of what we call a sadhu. And that definition was given by Kapila Muni in the 3rd canto. Kapila Muni is teaching his mother, Devahuti. And he says, Prasangam madaram pasham atmanak kavayo vidu sa esha sada shukato moksha dwaram apavatam. Mundane attraction keeps us tied to birth and death infernal. But love for sadhus opens wide the doors to life eternal. So the next question is, well, who is a sadhu? So then he describes a sadhu, and it perfectly describes Prahlad. Statikshava karunika suridak sarvadehinam ajata shattabhakshanta sadhavak sarabhushana. This is the first verse described. The sadhu is tolerant and compassionate at the same time. He is a friend of all living entities, has no enmity toward anyone, though, as we see with Jesus Christ, so many had enmity towards him, but he had no enmity. Ajata Shattabhak Shanta. And because he's free of material desires and free of any enmity, he's completely peaceful. Sadhavak sadhabhushana. These are the ornaments of a sadhu. Now, how does one achieve that state? Kapila, Maya Nanyena Bhavane Bhaktim Kurvanti Yedvidham. That a sadhu has undeviating, unwavering devotion to me. Kapila Deva is an incarnation of Krishna. Uh-oh. You didn't turn the phone off. That's a turn off. Anyway, and for my sake, the sadhu will give up any activity, do any activity, or even give up family bonds, as he kind of did with Hiranyakashipu, his father. So it goes on like that. Now, after the whole adventure, and Prahlad is tormented by his father externally, you know, it's hair-raising to really hear or read what happened to Prahlad. His father was a first-class demon, and the devotee was a first-class devotee, or Prahlad was a first-class devotee, trained in the womb, so his father didn't realize it. So when he learns that he's a devotee, that he wants him to worship God, and he's not willing to give up that devotion, he decided to kill him on his own, or at least have him killed. So, crushing under elephants, poison as a snake, burning, chopping, whatever you think, and boiling in oil. So through everything, Prahlad is completely fixed. His mind is completely fixed on Krishna. So he's not feeling any pain. He's not feeling any pain. Krishna is protecting him, just like Haridas Thakur wasn't feeling anything. You see? And so, when it's all over, and then he's offering his prayers to Nrsingadev, Lord Nrsingadev. And he has wonderful instruction in the prayers. Near the end of the prayers, he has 2 verses that encapsulate the actual mood of Srila Prabhupada and all the great preachers. And that is like this. He says, Naivodvijay padadoratya vaitaranyaspadbhiya gayana mahamata magna chitta. First thing he says is that I have no problem at all, my dear Lord. I'm not disturbed in any respect. Because anywhere I am, I can chant your glories and absorb myself in thought of you and dive into an ocean of nectar. I can experience that spiritual happiness in any circumstance. But, though I am lamenting for all these poor souls who don't know you, who are trying to enjoy this world called Maya Sukhaya, illusory happiness. And so, as I was describing earlier, they're burning in the fire of samsara, life after life. I'm disturbed for them. And therefore, the next verse, which is key, he says, mostly for people who are even interested in spiritual life, they want to gain their own liberation. And so they leave the cities, they go off alone somewhere, practice mauna silently, you see. Svabhamukti kama. This is the kind of lust, material desire. I'm going to be delivered, I'm going to become free of all suffering, and the hell with everyone else. That's not bhakti. That's not the soft heart, you see. So Prahlad says, I'm not like that. I'm not, naitan vihaya kripana. I can't give up these fools and rascals, these wretched people who don't know you, because I can see there's no other hope for them but you, and I have to give them you. You see? That's the mood of the Vaishnava. Not that you offer Krishna your suffering, you offer Krishna your love. You offer Krishna everything, and you get more than everything back, because he has everything. And mostly what you get is this plane of unending happiness. Even though physically you're going through so much, there's so many difficulties, but you yourself can traverse that on the plane of the platform of Krishna consciousness. And at the end, go back to Godhead and take as many people back as possible. That's successful Krishna consciousness. Okay. Anyone else have any comments, questions? We used to have a mic. All right. One more poem. This is like one of the foundational verse for the whole movement. Lord Chaitanya's first verse of the Shikshashtaka. Lord Chaitanya wrote very little, although he taught a lot, and his teachings were embodied in the writings of the Goswamis. But one thing he did write was 8 verses about the holy name. Now, something you may not know, even those who have been around for a while, is that he didn't write it all in 8 verses as an ashtaka. It's called the Shikshashtaka. Ashtaka means 8 verses of instruction. But he wrote them at different times in different places, and they were collected in the book called the Padyavali, which is Rupa Goswami's nectar file, his favorite verses. Some of them by him, but most of them are not. and they're scattered throughout. They were brought together by Krishna's Kaviraj in the last chapter of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and they've come down to us as the Shikshastra. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written a beautiful commentary and so forth. So the first verse encapsulates the benefits of chanting. And if we just have faith in this, we'll be inspired to chant, because the next thing we're going to do is some kirtan. So it's natural. So those of you who know can join me. Cheto darpanamarjanam bhavamahadhavagni nirvapanam shreyakaidava chandrika vatadanam vidyavadhu jivanam anandam buddhivardhanam padipadam purnamita swadanam sarvatmasnaparam param vijayate Shri Krishna sankirtanam. All glories to the chanting of Shri Krishna's holy names, which easily extinguishes samsara's blazing flames by polishing the lust-encrusted mirror of the heart. That chanting is the waxing moon that knows the secret art of causing the white lotus of good fortune to unfurl its petals far and wide throughout this bleak and blighted world. Of transcendental knowledge, which will take us to life's goal, the chanting of the name of Krishna is the life and soul. The ocean of ecstatic bliss floods far beyond its bounds, wherever Krishna's merciful and mystic name resounds. Indeed, whenever Krishna's names are sung in congregation, at every step one tastes a joy that knows no limitation. So hear with great attention, as I earnestly request, please chant Shri Krishna's holy names and be supremely blessed. The soothing nectar of the name will bathe your consciousness, bestow pure love for Krishna, and eradicate distress. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare